Hello and welcome to Simple Biblical Hebrew. This is part 2 in a new series, Learning the Hebrew Alphabet Together. This is for the beginner who is wanting to learn to read Biblical Hebrew, and it starts off with, as we said last time, learning to memorize the 22 letters of the alphabet with simple vocalizations. So each of these 22 letters, we are going to apply a simple vocalization for them, mostly an ah vowel sound for each of these consonants. And even linguists today, when they study ancient languages, they believe, like, for instance, Egyptian hieroglyphs and different things, that way back in history, these languages had simpler vocalizations, and then as time went on, they progressed and became more complex with different vowel sounds for all of them, which is good, and that's what languages do. But it helps if you want to learn Hebrew, and that's sort of the system here on this channel is Simple Biblical Hebrew, is to begin learning the alphabet with simple vocalizations. We're not going to worry about the nikud or any of these things that so often hinder the beginner, and we're just going to begin to speak these letters like a baby would, like a little baby would. Little babies learn their language, they start to speak the language, and at first they say things very simply with simple vowel sounds, and they don't even say everything right, but you know what they're saying. And so that's the case learning God's word. We're going to begin simply like little children, learning to speak the alphabet, not worrying about how to say things right, but just like a little baby, not being afraid to just say Abba. So we're going to learn to memorize the Hebrew alphabet today, and we're going to apply simple vocalizations to each of the letters at first. Later we'll learn more complicated vowel sounds and nikud and so on, Lord willing. So for today then, here's the alphabet, and we'll go through the letters, and we'll say what each letter sounds like, and this is what you want to memorize to begin to learn to read Biblical Hebrew. Aleph. Aleph says ah. Later Aleph will say E and O and all kinds of vowel sounds, but for now Aleph says ah. Bet. Bet says ba. Later, Bet might say va with a V sound, but for now, Bet says ba. Gimel. Gimel says ga. Gimel. Dalet. Dalet says da. Dalet. Hey. Hey says ha. Hey. Vav. Vav says wa or va. It depends on what you want to do. Vav, at the beginning there was no va sound. The V sound comes from the Roman Empire, you taking the alphabet and learning from it, but and Latin comes from the Hebrew Phoenician alphabets, and so does Greek. But at first it's mostly thought by scholars that at first it was pronounced with a wa sound, and then later, after the Roman conquest, it began to be pronounced with a va sound or an u sound or a wa sound. That's where we get our English W and V and U. But at any rate, Vav is a quirky letter with a lot of history to it. Vav says wa or va, depending on what you want to do. Zayin. Zayin says za. Chet. Het says cha. Cha. Tet. Tet says ta. Tet. Yod or Yud. Yod says ya. Yod. Kaf. And Kaf says ka. Kaf is a special letter because it's one of the 5 Sophite letters of the new Hebrew alphabet, the alphabet that Jesus used, not the Paleo Hebrew, but the one that we're studying today that came after the Babylonian captivity at the time of Christ, and so on. So, Kaf is the first of these Sophite letters, and Sophite means sort of like at the end. And so, if you're going to put a Kaf at the end of a series of letters, then you use this symbol. It's a Kaf Sophite. For instance, and it kind of hangs down below the line, by the way. So, for instance, here's kafecha, your hands, and if you notice here, here's a kaf, ka, fe, cha, and here's a kaf Sophite because it's at the end. So kafecha. Next is lamed. Lamed says la. Mim. Mim says ma, and it's the second of the Sophite letters. Mim Sophite looks like this. Here's a mim and a mim Sophite. Here's the Hebrew word mayim, waters, and you can see here that there's a mem, and here's the mem Sophite, mayim. Nun is the next letter. Nun says na. It's also a Sophite letter. It's the third Sophite letter. Nun Sophite. Nun Sophite. Hangs down below the line. For instance, here's just the Hebrew word nun. Nun, vav, nun Sophite. Next is samech. Samech says sa. Ayin. Ayin says I. So this is the first letter where it doesn't have an ah vowel sound. It has an I vowel sound at first. Later it will have an ah vowel sound, but it'll work with other letters to make other sounds. But for now, ayin. Pei. Pei says pa. Later, Pei will grow up and he'll learn to say fa with a ph sound as well. But for now, Pei says pa. It's also a Sophite letter, Pei Sophite. And there's the Pei Sophite. Pei and Pei Sophite. Next is Zadi. Zadi, I like Zadi a lot. And Zadi says za. Like when we say pizza. Za. Zadi. A little bit different. It's also a Sophite letter. It's the last of the Sophite. And Zadi Sophite. And there's what a Zadi Sophite looks like. Next, Kuf. Kuf says ka. Kind of like our Q. Kuf. Ka. Resh. And Resh says ra. Resh. Sheen. Sheen says sha or sa. Later it began to be pronounced sometimes with a sh sound and sometimes with just an s sound. So we'll learn more about that later, but for now, sha, or if you'd like, sa. And then lastly, but not least, tav. And tav says tha. Later tav will say ta, but for now as we learn, tav says tha. So then here we go, the Hebrew alphabet. A, ba, ga, da, ha, wa, za, kha, ta, ya, ka, la, ma, na, sa, I, pa, za, ka, ra, sha, tha. Aleph, bet, gimel, dalet, hey, vav, zayin, chet, tet, yud, kaf, lamed, mim, nun, samech, ein, pei, zadi, kuf, resh, shin, tav. I hope you can join us next time as we begin to, once we memorize all of these letters, we begin to put them into different orders and learn to actually read biblical Hebrew. So in the next lesson, if you memorize these letters and those sounds, you will be able to already read Hebrew words. So I'll show you how to do that. I hope to see you next time. God bless you.